Welcome to the Podunk Polymath, a podcast dedicated to the sentiments of a secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southern SJW and skeptic. I'm your host, Chris. Come on in. This is episode 58 of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. Thank you for joining me, and sorry again, I took another week off. You know, I've had some shit going on in my life that has rearranged things a bit. I won't go into too much detail, but let's say it involves a certain relationship I'm in. So anyway, y'all don't need to know nothing about that because it's my personal life, and, well, you know, I'm super secretive. I never get on and do Facebook karaoke, ever. Anyway, enough of that. First, I wanted to ask y'all to rate the podcast. I have noticed I haven't gotten much lately, and admittedly, I haven't been on much because I keep jerking off and missing deadlines and such, but I'm going to try to remedy that. So, if you are inclined, please go rate the show on iTunes. You know, leave me a star rating and leave a review, or, you know, a star rating's good too, but I prefer the review too. You know, it's up to you. I'd really appreciate if you did so, and I hope that you will enjoy this week's episode because I'm speaking with somebody I really admire. But first, on the pre-ramble this week, I want to talk a bit about Harvey Weinstein, whatever the fuck his name is. The movie producer who was accused of sexually harassing, raping a bunch of women over his time as a major producer in a movie company. And, of course, I say accused. He did it. I mean, I wasn't there, but you know what I'm saying? Who the fuck's going to lie? Women rarely lie about this sort of thing, and we need to stop assuming that they're lying and just take it at face value. So, Harvey, he's fucking a piece of shit, basically. And this has opened a whole thing, the Me Too campaign, hashtag Me Too, women coming out and telling their stories about being harassed and raped, assaulted, etc. And it's really sad and depressing and infuriating seeing all these stories coming out. I mean, it's no surprise to anybody who pays attention to this sort of thing, and frankly, I'm a little off-put by people who, what? I can't believe this is happening. Are you kidding me? Motherfucker, please. Where do you think you live? This is a fucking patriarchal society. Men think they can get away with anything just because they're men. So, can you please stop with the feigned expressions of surprise and dismay, unless you've just been having your head in the sand for the last, 200 years, 300 years this country's been in existence? Or hell, since men have been in existence for that matter. Anyway, so yeah, it's sparked this whole thing about we men need to basically stand up and we gotta do some shit. We can't just let this shit keep going on. We gotta fucking say shit. When guys pull shit, we gotta just come out and say shit. And there's also this fucking bullshit campaign of I did, I have, whatever. And there's also people trying to men are harassed too. This ain't about you, motherfucker. God damn. Everything ain't about your ass, okay? It's about women. This whole thing started because of a woman being raped. It ain't about you. Quit trying to fucking co-opt everything. This is about women being assaulted and have been for time immemorial. Powerful people do it, sure. But they're not the only ones. This is a society-wide problem. And fuck, man, this has to be addressed. We can't just keep sweeping this shit under the rug. We gotta do something. So guys, stand the fuck up and don't let this shit happen. Call shit out when you see it. Get in the middle of shit if they look like they're being threatened. I'll say man up. In this instance, yeah, man up. Be a man in this situation. And basically I'm saying stand up to another man who's being a dick. So I think that's incumbent on all of us. And believe women. Believe women when they say they've been raped or assaulted. The percentage is exceedingly low when it comes to false accusations of rape or assault. So it's a pretty good chance that if they're telling you they've been assaulted or raped, they have been. So your default should be it happened, not, well, you know, I wasn't there, so I don't know. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. I'm telling you need to pay attention to women when they speak. Shut your fucking trap, and this goes for anything, as you know, feminism, anything else. Shut the fuck up, let women speak about shit that affects women in general, but especially this. So, yeah, women, keep talking. You know, I know it's hard. Let these men know that you ain't gonna put up with this shit no fucking more. It's ridiculous. I mean, 2017 and we still got this bullshit going on. So, This has really pissed me off. And then somebody released a list of people who have been accused of rape, and I was not thrilled to see this article. Neil deGrasse Tyson was listed. Now, did a little research, and a woman made an accusation, something that happened 30 years ago, and very little play. It got very little play. So I don't know if he's too popular or for anything to be done. I don't know what the fuck's going on with that. But frankly, I wouldn't be surprised, because men are going to men. Let's just be honest. It doesn't not affect anybody. Men have been raised in the same patriarchal system. You know, nobody's immune. Even the person you think is the most awesome, influential, nicest person in the universe may have done some fucked up shit, or have raped somebody, or done some other shit. You don't know. So just don't assume that just because somebody seems to be on the outwardly, I can't even think of the fucking word, is just like this pillar of awesomeness, that they haven't done some shit. Okay, so stop doing that, and believe women, and men call out men, basically, and quit being fucking misogynistic, assaulting fucksticks. All right, how about that? I'm sorry, the whole thing got me quite pissed off. So anyway, on the palaver this week, I have the pleasure of having Stephanie Zvan. See, I fucked it up again. She is, of course, a blogger, a speaker, convention organizer, and she speaks on social justice issues. We talked about how to deal with criticism as public figures, but in general, I guess you could use it for that. Of course, we reference a certain public figure that has gone through such a thing and apparently does not and has not learned or will not learn from his mistakes and keeps being a prick and sticking his foot in his mouth. So I won't name who it is here. You can listen to pre-ramble and find that out. But anyway, so I think you'll really enjoy it. And Stephanie's great. I love her. She's knowledgeable, diplomatic. Well, she doesn't like me calling her diplomatic, but compared to me, she is. And just overall, she puts her money where her mouth is, and she gets shit done. Oh, and she'll be at Skepticon. So if you haven't planned on going, you should go definitely just for that. And of course, there's going to be plenty of other speakers as well and workshops. So I'm really excited to go to that. Anyway, I'll stop rambling in the pre-ramble. On to the interview.
I'm Jenica.
And I'm Patrick of Real Life Beyond Faith.
And we are a formerly Christian,
currently atheist couple
who take a deep dive into the experience of life after deconversion.
Join us weekly as we talk about topics relating to the journey out of religion.
And interview guests who have their own unique stories to tell.
Look for us on Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Stitcher,
and anywhere else you can find your favorite podcasts.
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm Crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told. We go through different topics, exploring them in depth, and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust in myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
Welcome to another edition of Palaver here in the Podunk Polymath Podcast. This week I have with me blogger, speaker, conference organizer, and one of my favorite people, Stephanie Zvan, right?
Zvan.
Shit. I guess I should have asked that beforehand. How's it going, Stephanie?
You have added yourself to a long list of distinguished people who have pronounced my last name wrong. I'm doing fine. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm glad that, first of all, I wanted to thank you for contacting me. I was very flattered, actually, because you're somebody I admire a great deal. And I've seen you around on social media, and I've seen some of the work you've done, and I've been quite impressed. So thank you for coming on.
Well, you wanted to talk about one of my favorite topics. And I mean, even if I didn't already like you as a person, I can't pass that up.
Flattery will get you most places. So anyway, yeah, so the topic we wanted to talk about specifically was dealing with criticism. And specifically maybe as a more public person, I guess. So first of all, why don't you tell me sort of your experience in this area?
Well, So I've been blogging for 10 years now, been speaking for something like 6, helped run 3 conferences, the last of them a very feminist conference. So I have certainly come in for my fair share of criticism. I've come in for my unfair share of harassment. I've done plenty of criticizing people. And it didn't take long to start noticing patterns in terms of, well, honestly, what made things worse? Because, frankly, the things that we get criticized for are often minor, and the things that blow them up into a big deal on the internet is often how we react. And I have made some massive mistakes in my time. There's one in particular. I still get cold sweats thinking about how badly I screwed something up. But one of the reasons that I'm still here and still able to have any credibility at all is that I handled it okay after that initial major screw up. So I have some idea what I'm talking about here, and I'm not talking about it from a holier than thou perspective. These are hard lessons that I've learned and put into practice.
Okay, well, it's good to hear you come from that perspective, and you kind of know what you're talking about, and that you learn it from experience, because I think, that's how we learn most things, is when we screw up. Of course, that's an old trope. We learn from our mistakes, but it's absolutely true. So let's get into, of course, we would have to go ahead and ride the elephant in the room, so to speak. This sort of mythicist Milwaukee debacle. I think, first of all, we should, for listeners who have been living under a rock, which I'm sure most people who listen to the show know what the hell I'm talking about, but go ahead and kind of give a brief overview of what we're talking about here.
So, and I say this with a certain amount of hindsight because we've been listening to the organizers of the conference that Mythicist Milwaukee put on talk about why they made the decisions that they did. At some point, Mythicist Milwaukee decided that what they really wanted to do was get attention. There are good ways to do that. There are not such good ways to do that. Their most recent not such a good way to do that was to invite some anti-feminist, anti-SJW, you can hear those air quotes, right? YouTubers to speak at their conference. And one of those that they decided to bring in was a guy who calls himself Sargon of Akkad, otherwise known as Carl Benjamin, who is infamous for not really contributing much, but coming to fame and financial stability, apparently, by bringing negative attention and harassment to other people. I mean, he came to prominence as part of Gamergate. The thing that ended up being a major problem for Mythicist Milwaukee was that he tweeted at an MP who was talking about rape and harassment with, "I wouldn't even rape you," which is not a thing that people normally say. And I would go so far as to say it's not a thing that normal people say. So there were several people who already knew about that, people who'd been dealing with Sargon in particular, like Christy Winters, people who've been following along on Gamergate, and a couple of people who were doing a pretty solid job of amplifying what Christy had to say, Steve Shives and Dan Arrow. And they reached out and contacted some of the other people who were going to be at the conference and who were basically lending it their credibility, like Aaron Raw, Matt Dillahunty, Seth Andrews. They had good reasons to be there. There was a movie they were connected with. But things went a variety of ways depending on, which one of those people we're talking about. Aaron Raw looked at that, had personal experience with Sargon, so knew who he was and what he was, and said, I don't have an opportunity to confront this. I'm dropping out. Matt Dillahunty, apparently his talent agency had him on a contract, and that's pretty much what he said. I'm on contract. I don't have any choice here. And was moderately quiet otherwise about the situation. And Seth Andrews used it as an opportunity to get very defensive in some odd places on Facebook and basically go on attack and talk about an outrage brigade that got upset about everything. And people in the cheap seats, with the implication there being a bunch of people that, for whatever reasons somebody would be considered to be in the cheap seats, he had no interest in listening to. And it generally went on attack until at some point he actually had somebody get through to him that he would listen to and point out who and what Sargon is, at which point he was like, oops, dropping out. But you people who tried to get me to do that are still terrible. And that was just really not a great way of handling public criticism. I don't think, I mean, had he done most of the same things aside from attacking people, had he kept quiet when people were contacting him about this, eventually looked and said, oh, ooh, no, and dropped out and not continued to attack people, he would be in a very different position today, in terms of how his reputation is faring.
All right, so you're extremely diplomatic, and I appreciate that.
I try to be. And
I understand, considering what you do. You give workshops, you're a speaker, and a blogger. So to some extent, you need to do that. And I'm not one way or another.
Well, and honestly, I mean, a large part of it is I could tell you how angry I am, but how angry I am doesn't get you any generalizable lessons out of it.
True enough. However, my job is not to do that. So I don't have this, and I've already made plain how I felt on the matter if anybody's been paying attention to my various screed. I gave one particularly long screed and didn't really say anything after that, but then he had to say, he just keeps opening his fucking mouth. And look, and I'm a rational guy. Look, I try to be, fair. I consider myself fairly open-minded, rational. I try not to go too much on one side on certain arguments. But when it comes to this particular argument and what you're talking about, the outrage brigade thing, I don't want to say whose feet it was on because it's not really appropriate, I guess. And
it stretched over several people's over time.
But initially I saw it on one particular person's Facebook feed. And I think y'all got into it over that, and I'm sure other. But that was the first instance I remember seeing it. And my particular background with the Mythicist Milwaukee thing was I said from the beginning that this is a bad idea for anybody to kind of legitimate these fuckwits from YouTube anyway. I mean, and Dillahunty did a long video regarding this, and he said he wasn't sure who this person was, and he goes to a lot of conferences and doesn't know half the people that he... Okay, I mean, I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that somebody like Sargon, who is pretty well known as being an asshole on YouTube and makes tons of money, well, lots of money off it, you don't know who he is. But whatever, I can't. So that some of that stuff rings a little hollow. At least Thomas Smith knew what he was getting into, and he did some research on it. So he knew what he was going in, and for him at least, he was going in to try to counteract, although I could have told you it wasn't going to do any fucking good to begin with, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. He did what he could, and he did what he thought was right. Now, when it comes to Seth, like I said, the Outrage Brigade thing, he seemed just, instead of trying to engage with people who had, I thought, legitimate grievances, legitimate concerns about how this would affect people of color, minorities, I mean, whatever you want to say, women, I mean, because he said, like you said, the I wouldn't even rape you thing. I mean, that's against a PM.
And we should make the point that ended up getting applause from a very large section of the audience.
Exactly.
By the time that This Is Milwaukee went around, there were women in that audience who were slightly freaked the fuck out.
Yeah, and I heard a lot about that too. And some of them walked out. They walked because, they felt unsafe. And is this what we want? Is this the kind of movement we want? That was Thomas's argument after he heard that pretty much. He said it a little more harshly, I think, but well-deserved, I thought. So, Seth pulls out, before he a parting shot against the Outrage Brigade, which apparently you are the patron saint of, I guess. I don't know.
I wouldn't know. I've tried to pin him down several times on exactly, who and what he means by that, and he simply doesn't answer me.
Because he knows he's full of shit.
Well, either that or I'm, for some reason, in the cheap seats.
What are the cheap seats?
I don't know. I don't know who doesn't qualify for Seth's attention. I don't know how many years I have to blog, or how many places I have to speak, or how many conferences I have to run, how many years I have to put in on the board of an organization, how much time and money I have to volunteer for this movement to get out of the cheap seats.
Well,
to actually have somebody engage with me.
Yeah, I'm the cheap seats. People like me are the cheap seats. Seemingly, people like you, I would think, would be more of the people you'd want to speak to about it. The quote-unquote leaders of the evil SJW movement, I don't know. Apparently I don't know what's going on with that, but I'm not sure why social justice is such a bad thing. Call me crazy. But anyway, so, yeah, the whole thing, he seemed just not to want to listen. He didn't, it's just like a lack of empathy. I don't know, because I've listened to him.
Well, we could speculate about a lot of personal things regarding that, but honestly, one of the first things that I point out to people when I do run a workshop like this is that hearing criticism never gets easy. It never gets fun. None of that ever, I then go on and, help people brainstorm some ways of dealing with that so they're not having a several week-long emotional fit over it. But honestly, if you receive criticism and you're distraught, you're perfectly normal. And there are things that you can do. Get up, go take a walk. If you're, into kickboxing, go do that. If not, go clean the bathroom or something. Just something that uses up all of the adrenaline that you feel because you're under attack. Because you are almost never going to face criticism, particularly public criticism, without feeling like you're under attack. But that feeling isn't going to help you. And if you turn around and attack people in return, it's almost certainly going to hurt you. And doubly so if you're wrong.
Oh.
There is hardly any worse look in terms of receiving criticism than getting up on a high horse about it and talking about how terrible everybody is who gave you any of that criticism, and then having to say, so about that, you guys were right. Yeah, right. Okay.
So lest we get too much into Seth bashing, because I don't want that to turn.
No.
We need to learn. There's a lesson here to be learned, which is the main reason you're on here, I guess. But it is fun, I have to admit, because he's an asshole. But anyway, to generally wrap things up, he dropped out, but not before parting shots against the Outrage Brigade, and it's still continued. He's still popping up on people's feeds that I don't ever see him on. And when I was on, he responded to one of my comments, and he just won't shut up about it.
You're very special,
No, I'm the cheap seats.
Or maybe it's just me.
I'm the cheap seats, so I don't warrant particular attention. He doesn't mention my name, so but that's fine. No. He keeps popping up to try to make his case, and it seems like he's making it worse. So, what could he have done better?
Seriously, just not attacking people. And this is one of those things that in a movement like ours, the atheist skeptic movement, because they're kind of two, but huge overlap. We actually preach this and then kind of forget about it when we're attacked, when we're criticized ourselves. And, if he had just addressed those points that people brought up, well, first of all, he would have learned what kind of person Carl Benjamin is much sooner, and before he had defended the choice to put him on stage. But also, he wouldn't have alienated a bunch of people who honestly believed in him enough to come and say, I think you want to do the right thing here. I mean, he didn't make enemies of these people because most of these people are not that dramatic. But these are people who literally trusted him enough to tell him something that ultimately was going to make him look better. They were warning him. If you put your weight behind Mythicist Milwaukee, that's not going to be a good look for you. Here's why. You have an option to do something about this. Come out of this the hero. And obviously, there are people who are not going to think you're the hero if you talk down somebody like Zvan. Mythicist Milwaukee managed to put together something like 500 of them. But at some point, you also have to decide who you want your audience to be. So these people were giving him an opportunity. And I mean, that's a lot of what criticism is. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get something right that you were going to get wrong. It's an opportunity to show that you care about what other people think. It's an opportunity to, if there is a big misperception in terms of what people are coming to you with criticism on, it's an opportunity to clear that up. If you say something that really didn't come across the way you wanted it to, you can say, you're right. I said that wrong. Let me fix that. And then people don't think that you're all of the things, for example, that they call Sam Harris, who never takes that opportunity to say, okay, you know what? I said that badly. Here's what I actually mean.
Yeah, he's the king of that.
He really is.
And he keeps re-upping on it constantly. So, further making his reputation amongst people like us, like sturdy SJWs, even worse. I don't know. That's a whole different case. But, so, yes. He should just listen. And that's what and my impression was if he would just talk to somebody like yourself or somebody, a representative of the faction, I don't know what you want to call it, and just try to, figure out, hey, look, this is why we have concerns. Can you, what do you think about it? I mean, can we find some sort of agreement here? It just doesn't seem like he would, I don't know. There wasn't an interest to try to find that. And then
No, I mean, he has plenty of friends who know who Sargon is. There are plenty of people within the movement who understand or can quickly understand why putting Sargon on stage is a problem for a movement that says we want more people of color and women to be active. We don't want to chase them out. There's, Secular Woman, which is a whole advocacy organization for women within the movement in terms of how they're treated, in terms of just listening to their concerns. There are places he could have reached out, even if he didn't like the way certain people were talking to him. There are places that he could have gone that saying, there's something going on here, I'd like some help understanding it, that could have helped a lot, much more quickly.
Yeah, so maybe he'll redeem himself. Maybe he'll come out and say, look, after a lot of thought and talking to some people, I admit that I said some things I shouldn't have said. I apologize. Whatever. I don't know his track. I'd be honest, I haven't paid much attention to him until fairly recently. So that's possible. I don't know his track record as far as making admissions of guilt or when he's screwed up. So, do you have any idea his record as far as that goes?
No, this is, I have much more experience making podcasts than listening to them just because of how my brain processes audio. So I have not been really in with most of the podcasters in the movement. So I don't really have a good sense of that. But yeah, I mean, if I were him, it's not going to be easy at this point. But, you know, the big three things to do are stop attacking the people who were right, because that's a bad look. At that point, you're really just saying these people, the thing that comes across is these people embarrassed me, and now I'm unhappy with them. Figure out how to either make an apology or at least so here's what I'm going to do handling these kinds of situations going forward, and just drop it.
And that's my cue to drop it, because we've already said it. Now, are there other notable examples of this sort of thing that come to your mind? I'm sure there are plenty, but what are some more notable examples, I guess I should ask?
Well, so just talking about the attacking thing, the fact that getting defensive frequently makes things worse. I'm going to actually, hang on just a second. So one of the things that happens when you do that is that is frequently when you say the thing that really gets you in trouble. So, for example, there have been plenty of times within the movement, much more so previously because conference organizers are getting much better about this. But when people said, okay, so why is your conference all white men? And the response to that, which is very much a defensive response, has been, well, we don't want to put a woman or a black person on stage just to fill a quota. And that's when you actually get in serious trouble, because overlooking the fact that the first people you think of when you think of potential speakers are white men, that's a really common mistake. It's, it falls under implicit bias. But the minute you start suggesting that the only reason that you would put a woman or a black person or another person of color on stage is because of their gender or because of their skin tone, you're actually saying something about what you think of the quality of these people as speakers. And now you're really in trouble. That's what's actually going to blow things up. That's what's actually going to get people to stop wanting to have anything to do with you. That's the thing that's going to get you called sexist or racist. And rightly so, because that is a sexist or a racist statement. So, yeah. And I mean, I'm not just making this up. This has actually happened. One of the organizers of the Amazing Meeting several years ago, not the guy who became infamous for the way the Amazing Meeting ran, but before that, actually started talking about quotas, got himself in a bunch of trouble, had to work to get out of it, eventually did. But people actually say this stuff when they're being defensive. And then we suddenly know why it is that we don't have women on stage, why we don't have people of color on stage.
Yeah, people tend to get real honest when they get really angry.
Or really scared, yeah.
Yeah. So it depends. I mean, that's just human nature, I guess, to an extent. And I guess it goes to the point that you need to, if you feel that you're being attacked and you want to respond immediately, you should not respond immediately. You should go, walk around and count to 10, do something.
Well, and interestingly enough, that goes counter to a lot of the kinds of information that you can find about dealing with criticism. Most of which is aimed at brands rather than, for example, individuals. And they're like, oh, no, especially now in the age of Twitter, you need to respond in 60 minutes or something. What a lot of that advice doesn't tell you is, sure, you have to tell people that you're listening. But at that point, you can say, I'm listening, I'm looking into what happened. We have, particularly when you're for example, an organization putting on a conference, we have a bunch of people to consult with. I'm not, empowered to speak for the whole group right now. Give us a little time here. We're taking this seriously. We're working on it. We'll get back to you. All of those things are actually dealing with the complaint, but they're not you having to say things under pressure.
That makes a little too much sense.
I know. One weird trick for... Okay.
Clickbait. We could use some clickbait for some positive stuff, though. I mean, come on. And the means justify the ends? I think so. Even if it's clickbaity, if it goes to a positive end, I'm okay with that, strangely enough. So this particular instance you're speaking of, would you say the person handled it well or not?
By talking about speaker quotas? No, no, not at all. Just thinking about the representation that we're putting on the stage wasn't really part of our process. We should maybe do that. Whether that's we can't fix this for this year, or hold on, we have some decisions to make about how we fill out the rest of our speaker list, all that kind of thing. I mean, any of that would have been much better. But denying that there was a problem actually required leaning on some really icky justifications.
Unsurprisingly enough.
Yes.
So, what is there? Do you have a positive example, perhaps, of somebody who has learned from something people have said and taken it to heart?
Oh man.
Oh God.
Let me just say, not so much in the movement, although there are people who actually do it really well. You just don't notice them. Because it tends to be something where they get criticized, they handle it, they move on. There are actually a number of bloggers who get criticism, particularly about a piece, this didn't address that. And they're like, you're right, it didn't. I can, specify that I was talking about a particular circumstance and it doesn't generalize. Thank you for pointing that out. But that doesn't get the same kind of attention. So my examples for that are generally up a few levels in terms of fame. Steve Martin, for example, is really, really good about dealing with a joke that ends up landing really flat for some reason that he didn't intend. And not even just jokes. For example, his remembrance when Carrie Fisher died hinged very much on how she was a young, beautiful thing when they met. And
I seem to recall that, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not really what Carrie Fisher is known for. And in fact is the kind of thing that she probably would have challenged herself if she'd still been alive. Because a lot of the point of her work was dealing with how difficult it was to be treated as somebody whose main value was her looks. And so people pointed that out to Steve Martin. And he was like, right, oops, thank you for pointing that out. A little better than that, because he actually spends some time, crafting pretty much all of his words that go public. But that was pretty much the response. And not only that, but people then started, attacking him for apologizing for that, because that's what happens on social media when when somebody does something feminist, that's what happens on the internet. They get attacked.
Go figure.
And he told those people, no, they were right. My critics were right. Let them be. And, when you can do that, honestly, when you can say not just that your critics are people who were correct in what they had to say, but that they're people that you value. They're people who shouldn't be in any way attacked for pointing out that you screwed something up. That's pretty powerful.
You're right. And I have a lot of respect for him for doing that, or anybody else who does that. And I'm sure many people, and they're, just regular people, have done the same thing. I know I've I've made mistakes before and try to rectify them when I've realized that I've said something I shouldn't have. I mean, I think it's difficult, though. I think it's just human nature to kind of want to lash out right away, get defensive. And it really takes practice to not do that, I think.
It does. It takes active practice. It takes, honestly, sitting down and thinking about what you're trying to accomplish by having this conversation with somebody. Because give and take on criticism, it's still a conversation. If it's happening in public, you probably have goals for it. You probably have things that you want to get across, beyond just, I don't want to look bad, although it takes time to sit down and figure out what it is you're trying to do beyond, I don't want to look bad. And so really just spending some time focusing on what your goals are. And, there are plenty of people who, if they did that, would not have gotten themselves into the mess that they did. The amazing meeting organizer who I spoke about before is somebody who I'm pretty sure considers himself a feminist. I've seen him do plenty of feminist things. I'm pretty sure his goals did not include reinforcing people's ideas that women don't speak well.
Ugh.
If he'd thought about what his goals were, he probably wouldn't have said that.
Ugh.
So, I mean, just thinking about what it is you're trying to accomplish can make a big difference.
Okay, Stephanie, what about yourself? Have you found yourself in these sort of circumstances where you've said something maybe you shouldn't have and had to go back and kind of rectify?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I speak, I say things, I write things. I have a point of view. That point of view is very white. That point of view is affected by a upbringing that largely happened in white exurbs. There are lots of things, very straight. There are lots of things that if I don't think about when I'm saying them, I am excluding points of view while saying something that I think is universal. And I've gotten called on that a lot. I get better at it, keep trying, but there are things that, just are completely outside my experience. And so it's the kind of thing that I'm hopefully going to do less over time, but I'm probably not ever going to completely exclude. And so, yeah, people definitely tell me about that. And I'm like, good point. And if I'm writing, that's something where I can say, I'll go back and make a note that is not, that when I'm talking about this particular kind of experience. It may not apply outside of that. If I'm speaking, I have an opportunity to either, say, so the next time I give this kind of talk, I will specifically say something about that. I don't think in speaking I've ever done something that was big enough that it warranted by the way, you might actually come away from this talk with this particular idea that this kind of experience is universal or that this point always applies. That's not actually true. Somebody pointed this out. It's a really good point. I don't think I've done that speaking. Not that anybody's told me about. I actually have a problem with criticism in that I can be a little intimidating just kind of on a general basis, in part because I have spent a number of years being harassed and have a fairly firm response to that. And so I have to actually find ways to signal that I'm open to criticism if I want to hear it. So that can be a problem for me.
Yeah, you do seem to be kind of intimidating, I have to be honest with you. I've seen you in a couple of stages, a couple of threads. I'm like, oh, Stephanie, okay, I don't think they meant it that way, but, I could be wrong, So, I mean, and I've come across, because you're just you have a lot of gravitas to me. You have a lot of experience in this sort, and so you know what you're talking about. You know, you're not just some troll just talking out of their ass or whatever. You're somebody who has, you know, something to say, and you know how to say it, get it across. So I think that's part of it. But then again, social media is a whole different thing. There's no tone, there's no nuance to how you're saying things because you can't hear somebody speak. You know, so I think that's part of it. But then again, like you said, you've been harassed on several occasions. So I wouldn't be somebody to put anybody down or call anybody out, especially considering that background. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Well, and that is actually something that particularly strongly feminist women have a difficult time dealing with when they're talking about criticism and when they're figuring out how to deal with criticism. And I am absolutely sure that this is true for people of color, but a lot of the information I have on how feminist women end up having to deal with this comes from running this workshop at one of the Ada initiatives, Ada camps up in Montreal, where we spent probably a third of the time of the workshop trying to figure out good ways to differentiate between harassment, things like petty criticism or unfounded criticism, or specifically misconstruing things that women are saying in order to find something to criticize. Figuring out when you're dealing with that and figuring out when you're dealing with the actual founded criticism that you should pay some attention to. And that can be a major issue for groups that come under attack and get harassed a lot, is you can get a really knee-jerk response to what comes across as harassment. And most of the time, you're right about that. But it also ends up being kind of a shitty way to deal with honest criticism. So that's a really hard line to walk for people subjected to that.
Totally fair, and I completely understand, and I frankly admire your honesty, and of course you walk the walk and not just talk the talk, so I think that's important, that you're a good role model. And I think you do have, especially somebody like you have dare I say, a place of authority almost in the movement, I guess, and you're kind of a voice for it. So I think it's important that you do that, and I appreciate you doing so and kind of showing what to do when you fuck up. And also, I admire you for being able to take all the harassment and still be able to keep your wits about you. I don't know how you do it, to be honest with you. I've heard some of the stories, and some of that's just utterly appalling what that's happened to you.
Yes. And thank you. I mean, I don't have much more to say about it than that when talking about this topic, but just...
Fair enough.
Yeah. There are times when 90 to 95% of what you're getting is just nonsense meant to tear you down and make you doubt yourself.
Understood. Let's move on to something positive. You're going to speaking at Skepticon. Are you speaking, or are you doing a workshop, or is it both? I can't remember.
I am doing, at this point, 2 workshops. I'm doing one solo workshop on how to do workshops, because that's meta.
I was going to say that's meta as fuck. Okay.
Well, I'm a big believer in actually training our activists who we want to have be activists, and getting in there and giving them some support before we criticize them. So I and Monette Richards and Chelsea Dufresne have been under the Secular Women Work umbrella running activist training workshops, a full set of workshops. We just take over one of their workshop rooms and run women and genderqueer people sharing their expertise for this will be the 3rd year, I believe, at Skepticon. And I am also co-presenting one very small part of an imposter syndrome workshop with Monette and with Jessica Shao.
Oh, so, I definitely have to, yeah.
Imposter syndrome. So many activists have it.
I mentioned that in a post I did a while back. And yeah, Jessica I know quite well, so that should be a good workshop. I definitely have to check that. I'm not sure how the setup is. Do they have it? Is it linear, or do you just go to different workshops that are going on at the same time? I don't even know.
They have 3 tracks of workshops at Skepticon, 3 basically side rooms. They're usually run during the day on Friday. They're adding a couple, I believe it's Saturday morning, and a couple Sunday afternoon this year as well.
Okay. I need to check out the schedule, because that's a lot of stuff for me to take in. That means I can't drink too much at night because I'll have a hangover.
I'm not actually going to argue with things that get people to drink a little less at some of our conferences.
Oh, yeah, I know. You're definitely... This isn't... Yeah. I'm not going... I don't plan on it anyway because it's not ReasonCon, which that's pretty much what ReasonCon is. Let's just be honest. It's people getting together and having fun. Oh, yeah, and there just happen to be some speakers. Yeah, it's not really...
Oh, Skepticon is plenty of fun. I'm just...
Oh, I know. I just meant not necessarily boozy carousing. Or this is more of a... This is more like the... they should be promoting it as the anti, or they may be, the anti-mythicist Milwaukee almost. Because
I have been.
Oh, well, yeah, you have been. But I meant...
I definitely... If Mythicist Milwaukee appalled you, Skepticon is a good place to start. They have certainly also, as an organization, come in for their share of criticism. Some of it really well-founded. And they do their best, even when it comes from people who have been harassing them, to take it on board and improve. And so, yeah, it just keeps getting better.
Well, I think on my page, actually, somebody had said something about being a bunch of white dudes. I don't know how long ago. They were talking about like 3 years ago, and that they stopped paying attention to it because of that.
Yep.
And you had said something about it had been getting better, whatever. So maybe that'll make him look into a little more. You definitely have a more diverse lineup. I don't know why you can't have more white guys. We are underrepresented.
Are you saying you'd like to talk?
Nobody wants to hear me talk. No, I don't.
Okay.
No. I've actually been saying we need less white dudes because I get tired of seeing the same ones over and over again. Because all the I've been to the past year and a half, I've been to like 4 or 5. I swear to God, it's like they pull them. There's the same ones over and over again, and it gets pretty old, you know.
Well, and Skepticon has been doing something for this will be the 3rd year, I think, of this as well, where they try to have a speaker lineup of people who have never appeared at Skepticon before, with maybe 1 or 2 favorites to come back.
That's good. I definitely think that's important to have, like, because I can't talk. More kind of new blood kind of pumping into the system.
Well, and talks that I've never heard before, topics that I haven't seen addressed at a skeptic or atheist convention. They've been great.
Yeah. So that's part of the reason I'm looking forward. And actually, you're the main reason I decided to go ahead and go, because initially I had seen it, but there was no speakers. There was no schedule. There was no anything up until not too long ago. I was like, what the hell's going on? And then you point out to me the lawsuit. That was whatever, the whole slap lawsuit. We won't get into that, but was messing things up. But finally they got some speakers to come out, and I was bitching about Mythicist, and then you said, well, why don't you check out Skepticon? And I was like, well, shit, they don't have anybody up. They're like, oh, go look. And then they started popping up. So I was like, okay, Fuck it. And then I did the calculate. I was like, it's only 6 hours. It's not even that far for me. So I said, fuck it. I'll just go. So.
Well, and I mean, honestly, location is part of the reason that they are one of the biggest and possibly the biggest atheist or skeptic conference right now, because that spot down in southern Missouri serves an awful lot of the country that isn't otherwise well served by our conferences.
Yeah.
It's a 10-hour drive for me, but I'm still going to do it.
Where are you? Oh, you come from Minnesota. That's right.
Yes.
You're driving that? Oh, Jesus. Ooh, that's 10 hours, I guess, isn't horrible, but it's still not great. I don't know. It's definitely cheaper than flying, I guess.
It is, especially with, as many people as we can even still comfortably pack into a car.
Oh, you're packing the other, okay. So you're, okay.
So, every year we try to bring somebody who otherwise maybe couldn't afford it.
Well, I'm picking somebody up at St. Louis Airport to bring him, so even though he paid way too much, they paid too much for that flight, but that's a whole different story. So, I had no problem. They helped me out when I was in LA. So, whatever I can do. Jessica Shao has said she's willing to help people if they need somewhere to stay. So, I really like how the community kind of bands together and tries to help people come out to these conferences. I think that's awesome.
Well, yeah, and the one thing we haven't mentioned about Skepticon is that it's free. It almost always has meals available if you can't otherwise afford to eat. We don't want people to spend their last little bit of money on gas to get there and then not be able to eat. So there's food you can. It's not great food, but you won't starve. And it does a lot to make itself accessible to a wider group of people.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't. That's probably the main thing, because I've been going to conferences since, like I said, for the last year and a half. I was like, shit, how much is this going to be? Because PastaCon just finished, and it was too much, and it was too far for me. So I kind of, even though there's a lot of people there I really liked, I couldn't go.
Yeah.
But this was a little different. And I said, well, shit, that was pretty much the determining factor. Well, that in 6 hours, and some of the speakers, some of the SJW types that I haven't actually seen in conferences, and because I've been bitching about there being too many white dudes.
Uh-huh.
I was like, okay, I need to go to the one where there's like not a lot of white guys, because I want to see this. So, and I found Jessica's going to be there, so I was like, well, should I go see her again? The Mandisa, who I've met a couple of times, so yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really look forward to going, and I look forward to meeting you, and hearing your workshops and all that kind of stuff. I mean, like I said, I don't want to kiss your ass too much, but I do really admire what you do, and
I might be sitting here blushing.
Well, I can't see you, so I can neither confirm nor deny that fact. So, yeah, I really appreciate what y'all do. You and people like Alex Jules, Candace, so many others I don't even know about, and that's another reason I'm glad to go, is to find out more about these people that are connected that I don't know that much about. I just know kind of the thought leaders, I guess. I don't know how you would say it. But like Monette Richards, I really don't know who that is, but I've heard of her. There are other people like I was talking about NanaCon.
I'll let you in on a little secret. Monette's the best.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad I know that now.
Yeah.
And you had suggested a bunch of speakers for NanaCon, because that's coming up next year. I don't know what they're going to do with that yet, but because I wanted to know, and you mentioned a bunch of people. I was like, who the hell are these people? Because I don't even know. So I want to learn more about that. I want to kind of get more in depth. I want to interview more of these people, because I don't think that's one of the kind of the things about the podcast community. It seems like there's not enough social justice-y things. That's why I wanted to gear this particular podcast to that, because I just don't see as much. There are some that have people on like yourself or Alex or somebody, but they don't seem to be centered on that. And I want to try to center it more on that. So that's why I really appreciate you coming on for that.
Well, I am always happy to push more people your way. There are lots of great people out there who do not get interviewed enough.
Well, like I said, give me a list.
Oh yeah.
I'm always, that's what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to get more. I've been kind of in and out lately because just life, but I'm really trying to get more back into it, and especially get more to the SJW part of my title or whatever, because I think especially what's going on now with Trump, Jesus God.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of Skepticon, we also have Greta Christina giving this is an exclusive for you, at least until the schedule comes out. Greta Christina doing a workshop on how we stay relevant as a movement in the age of Trump. How do we not necessarily stop just focusing on, crosses on public land, but how do we actually address all of these other problems that are taking precedence in people's mind lately, because there are an awful lot of people under threat under Trump.
Wow. That's awesome. Because Greta's somebody else I haven't met and would like to interview, actually. And I'm glad because I haven't heard much from her lately. I don't know. Maybe I'm out of the loop. I don't know. Maybe
it's been a rough year for a lot of people. Where last year's Skepticon was the weekend after the election.
Oh,
wow.
Shit.
Oh, wow. That was
I did not
a place to be.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my God. It's like a fucking funeral or something. Jesus. Yeah, I can't I can't imagine that was too pleasant, but I mean, hopefully we'll bounce back. I don't know. Assuming we're still around for the midterms, I don't know. We don't get bombed or anything. Who knows? I'm a cynic at heart, so
I was, a Gen X kid. I was looking at Reagan, figuring we were all going to die in nuclear war before any of us hit 30. So this is, okay, it's still not normal.
No.
Because this is actually way worse than that. But,
Yeah, I'm a Cold War kid. I mean, I remember the Land of Confusion video, the Genesis video. It's like, that was Reagan was the kind of the figurehead for all that paranoia back then. But this just seems to be something entirely different, and it's scaring a lot of people, and I think rightly in a lot of instances.
It's a scary situation.
And I hope people actually mobilize and do something about it, but it takes a lot to get people going sometimes.
Speaking of which, we have another workshop coming up at Skepticon. I'm apparently here to sell Skepticon on lessons in basically direct action from ACT UP, the organization of queer activists who fought and succeeded in getting the government to take AIDS seriously. So we have three people who used to be in ACT UP. Laura Thomas, who's also speaking at Skepticon, Ingrid Nelson, and Rebecca Hensler, all running a workshop on that.
Ingrid, I've heard of. I've seen her around.
Yep, Rebecca runs Grief Beyond Belief. Oh,
shit. Okay, I just talked to somebody about that, actually.
Yep.
Okay. All right, good. Because I'm going to be doing an episode on grieving while secular, so that'll be good. Okay. All right, awesome. Well, I gotta say, once again, it's been an honor to have you on. I really am flattered that you reached out to me about coming on my super popular podcast. Right up there with Serious Inquiries Only. No, not really, but
Oh, this has been a fun conversation. It's not that often that you actually get to, talk about folks who are doing it wrong as an opportunity to figure out how to do things right.
Let's end on that note. What a brief synopsis, just to kind of hammer things home. If you fuck up, what should you do to try to fix it? First of all,
do whatever you've got to do to stop making your feelings somebody else's problem. Yeah, you're anxious. You're freaking out that these people are telling you that you did something bad. You might actually have done something bad. All of those things are things to freak out about, but they don't become somebody else's problem just because you screwed up. Actually spend some time figuring out what the complaint is, what the problem is or isn't. Get that expert help if you need it. The people who are hurt by something that you do are not always the most articulate people. There are people who can help you sort that out if you need it. Figure out whether you actually did something wrong. That's not always the easiest thing to do. But also figure out, even if you didn't do something actively wrong, is there maybe something that you can do better? Is there a way that, for example, even if you were saying the right things, the way that you said them maybe caused problems? Think a little bit beyond just, did I do what they're saying I did? If you have to apologize, figure out how to apologize. This is actually one of the parts of criticism, that there's a decent amount of information out there on the web. But basically the parts of a decent apology are actually saying I'm sorry or I apologize, instead of just assuming that that'll come across, because they often don't. Keeping yourself from getting defensive or explaining, and I'll go into that a little bit more in a second, as part of your apology. Your apology isn't about you if you're apologizing. To the best that you can, sum up what the problem was. That doesn't necessarily mean rehashing it. that doesn't necessarily mean going into a lot of background information on what happened, but just, this is what I did. This is how that was a bad thing for somebody. Talk about what you're going to do going forward so that it doesn't happen again. Because honestly, that's the part that most people care about. They're not telling you to make you feel bad and wallow. Most people aren't telling you something like this to make you feel bad and wallow. What they really just want is the problem fixed. And so if you can talk about how you're going to do actionable steps to keep the problem from happening again, that's most of what people want. And then shut up about it.
Let it go.
Let it go. If people are still angry, let people be angry. You know, emotions don't resolve that quickly. A lot of the things that cause people harm are tied up in a bunch of other things that cause people harm. So even if you're not a problem anymore, it's attached to a lot of other things that are problems for people. They don't know yet whether they can trust you. It's going to be a long time before they find out for sure whether you actually do the things that you say you're going to do. So just let people have their reactions, hush when you've done what you need to do, and move on. And don't beat yourself up about it, because if you've actually taken steps, beating yourself up doesn't do anything more.
Good advice. And you're going to give a workshop, right?
I am not giving this one at Skepticon, but I am available to do workshops on handling public criticism most of the time. I just need to be able to get where people want me to give the workshop. It's something that I care a lot about. It's something that I think makes a big difference in making the world better, and I'm happy to help groups get better at it.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on, Stephanie. Again, it's been a great honor to have you on, and I'm glad you agreed to do it, and I look forward to seeing you at Skepticon.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Take care.
You too.
That'll do it for this episode of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. Again, I'm sorry about last week, but shit happens. And I'll try to do better next time. I want to thank Stephanie for coming on and talk to me. She's super awesome. I can't wait to meet her at the old Skepticon. So that'll be exciting. If you can make it, please do. I'll be there. And that should be a reason enough. And her. And Jessica Schau. And plenty of other awesome people. So come on out if you can. If you can't, well, you can live vicariously through my Facebook Live and my pictures, which I'm going to take a fuck ton of. Of course, the music for the show is done by ... You can go to cdbaby.com/cd/... to check out their music. New and improved logo by Jeff Prebig Jr. on Twitter at Pit Atheist. Of course, you can check me out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Google Plus under the Podunk Polymath. Of course, you can email the show at podunk.polymath@gmail.com. Patreon, you can become part of the posse at patreon.com/thepodunk-polymath. Of course, there's a call-in phone number, which nobody ever calls, so just cry me a river. Wah Chris, 615-378-7676, Popo, it spells. Of course, you can become part of the Podunk Polymath Podcast Posse Facebook group, facebook.com/group/the Podunk Polymath Podcast Posse, all separated by lovely periods. The Podunk Polymath Podcast online store is in full effect. And I still need to change the logo for the t-shirt because it's the old one and I keep saying that, but I never do it. So, I need to get on that. Of course, you look on the sidebar there, you see you can follow me on WordPress, follow me on Twitter, and see my tweets. There's a PayPal donate button. You can subscribe on RSS, Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. There's a Patreon button to become part of the posse. There's also a widget for you to like the Facebook page, which I would appreciate if y'all would do. Also, there's recent posts and recent comments. Again, sorry about last week. I'm trying to get my shit together after I have a little shift in my lifestyle, so to speak. So hopefully I'll be able to get that under control and get these shows out weekly as I've been doing. And also, I need to just get more SJWs on here, I think. I'm going to start trying to get more social justice-y. I've asked Stephanie to send me names of people I can interview so we can get my social justice on, so we can be all Sargon, hated or whatever, because those anti-SJW types love it when I talk shit about them. Fuck you, Sargon, all right? Or Carl Benjamin. What the fuck kind of name is Sargon any goddamn way? Who the fuck does this? Carl Benjamin, that's your fucking name. Is it too boring for you? I don't get it. Anyway, I will stop rambling now, but until next time, y'all take it easy now, okay?